There is a frozen pizza in your freezer right now. Maybe two, maybe three stacked behind the ice cream. And if you are like most American families, you grabbed it because the box showed bubbly cheese, a golden crust, maybe some Italian flag colors, maybe the words real or authentic or made with 100% mozzarella. It looked like a simple product. Dough, sauce, cheese, toppings. How complicated could it be? Here is the problem. The frozen pizza aisle is one of the most deceptive sections in the entire grocery store. Not because every pizza is dangerous, not because frozen food is inherently bad, but because the gap between what the box promises and what the ingredient list delivers is wider in this category than almost anywhere else in the supermarket. Some of the most trusted names in frozen pizza are using modified food starches to simulate the stretch of real cheese. Some are loading their crusts with dough conditioners you would never use in a home kitchen. Some are hiding sodium levels so high that a single serving, not even half the pizza, delivers more salt than you should have in an entire meal. And some are charging you a premium price for a product built on the same cheap commodity ingredients as the dollar brand sitting two shelves below. The mechanism is almost always the same. The front of the box sells you an experience. The back of the box tells you what you are actually eating, and most shoppers never flip the box over. Today we are going through 11 frozen pizza brands that deserve a much harder look and 5 that actually earn your money. And at the very end, I will give you a simple label test you can do in the frozen aisle in about 10 seconds that will tell you more about a frozen pizza than anything printed on the front of the box. Let's start with the brands to reconsider. Number 1, Tombstone. Tombstone has been in American freezers for decades. It is one of those names that just feels like it belongs. It is priced affordably. It is available almost everywhere. And for a lot of families, it is the default weeknight pizza. But take a look at the ingredient list on a Tombstone original pepperoni pizza. You will find enriched flour, which is standard. You will find tomato paste, mozzarella cheese. But then you start seeing things like modified food starch, sodium phosphates, BHA, BHT, and sodium nitrite in the pepperoni. The crust contains dough conditioners like sodium stearoyl, lactylate, and datim. These are not unusual in mass-produced bread, but they are not necessary either. They exist to make industrial-scale production faster and cheaper. The sodium is the real story. One serving of a Tombstone original pepperoni pizza, which is about 1/5 of the pie, can deliver over 700 milligrams of sodium. Most people eat at least 2 servings. That puts you over 1,400 milligrams in a single sitting, which is more than half the daily limit the American Heart Association recommends. And that is before you add a side or a drink. Tombstone is not the worst frozen pizza you can buy, but it is one of the most trusted names delivering one of the most average products. The trust is inherited. The quality has not kept up. Number 2, Totino's Party Pizza. This one is going to be personal for a lot of viewers because Totino's is a nostalgia brand. It is the pizza you ate as a kid. It is the pizza your kids eat now. It is $1 or $2 at most stores, and for that price, nobody expects gourmet. Fair enough. But here is what most people do not realize. Totino's Party Pizza does not technically use what most of us would call pizza cheese. The label says pasteurized processed cheese product. That is a specific legal term. It means the product on your pizza is not simply mozzarella. It is a blend that may contain milk protein concentrate, modified food starch, sodium citrate, sodium phosphate, and other ingredients used to create a cheese-like substance that melts uniformly and costs significantly less to produce. The crust is made with hydrogenated oils. If you look at the ingredient panel, you will see palm oil, soybean oil, and in some formulations, partially hydrogenated soybean oil. The FDA moved to eliminate artificial trans fats from the food supply, and most companies have reformulated. But the presence of highly processed oils in the crust is still worth noting for anyone watching what kinds of fats their family is eating regularly. At its price point, Totino's delivers exactly what it costs. But the concern is not one pizza on a Friday night. The concern is families who keep it in regular rotation because it is cheap and easy, without understanding that the cheese is not really cheese, and the crust is built more like a processed snack than a bread product. Number 3. DiGiorno. DiGiorno is the one that might surprise people the most, because DiGiorno positioned itself as the frozen pizza that competes with delivery. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno. That tagline built an empire, and the rising crust technology genuinely changed the frozen pizza market. The product feels premium. It is priced premium, and most shoppers treat it like a step up. But look closer. A DiGiorno rising crust pepperoni pizza contains over 40 ingredients. The crust alone includes sugar, dextrose, soybean oil, datem, sodium stearoyl lactylate, and calcium sulfate. The cheese contains modified food starch, sodium citrate, and sodium phosphate. The pepperoni includes BHA, BHT, citric acid, and sodium nitrite. The sodium content is especially notable. 1/6 of a DiGiorno rising crust pepperoni pizza, which is the listed serving, contains around 810 milligrams of sodium. But 1/6 of a pizza is a modest slice. Eat 1/3 of the pizza, which is a normal portion for most adults, and you are approaching 1,600 milligrams of sodium in one meal. From one product, DiGiorno is not a bad-tasting pizza. That is not the issue. The issue is that it is marketed as a premium, almost restaurant-quality product, but its ingredient list reads like a chemistry set. The rising crust is an engineering achievement, but engineering and cooking are not the same thing, and you are paying a premium price, often $5 to $8, for a product whose formulation is not dramatically different from brands costing half as much. Number 4. Red Baron. Red Baron is another legacy brand. It has been around since the 1970s. The branding evokes something classic, something trustworthy, something almost patriotic in that all-American frozen food aisle way. But Red Baron classic crust pizzas share many of the same concerns we have already discussed. Modified food starch in the cheese, sodium phosphates, BHA and BHT in the meat toppings, dough conditioners in the crust, and sodium levels that regularly exceed 700 milligrams per modest serving. What makes Red Baron worth calling out specifically is the sheer variety of products they sell. They make classic crust, brick oven, thin crust, deep dish singles, French bread pizzas, pizza melts, and scrambles. The brand name stays the same across all of them, but the ingredient list can vary significantly from one product to the next. A shopper who reads the label on one Red Baron product and feels okay about it might assume the rest of the line is similar. It often is not. This is a common strategy in frozen food. One brand name, dozens of formulations. The trust transfers, the ingredients do not. Number 5. Jack's Pizza. Jack's is owned by Nestlé, the same parent company that makes DiGiorno and Tombstone. It is positioned as the budget option in that family. And for what it costs, usually around $3 to $4, many shoppers feel like they are getting a fair deal. But Jack's original pepperoni pizza contains many of the same processed ingredients as its more expensive siblings. Modified food starch, sodium phosphates, BHA, BHT, soybean oil. The crust is thin and cracker-like, which some people enjoy, but it is achieved in part through the same dough conditioners and processed fats. The issue with Jack's is not that it is the worst product on this list. It is that it exists to catch the shopper who decided DiGiorno is too expensive, but still wants to stay within a familiar brand family. The formulation shortcuts are similar. The ingredient concerns are similar. You are just paying less for a smaller pizza with a thinner crust. The savings are real, but the quality improvement you might expect from a name brand product over a store brand is not always there. Number 6. Celeste Pizza for One. Celeste has been around since the 1950s. The name sounds Italian. The box shows a warm, inviting personal pizza. And for single servings, it is one of the most recognizable names in the freezer. But Celeste pizzas are small, and the nutrition math changes when the whole box is one serving. A single Celeste pepperoni pizza contains around 920 milligrams of sodium. That is the entire pizza, which is what most people eat because it is a personal size. That is nearly 40% of the recommended daily sodium intake from one small pizza that most people would consider a snack or a light meal, not a full dinner. The ingredient list includes the usual suspects: modified food starch, sodium phosphate, BHA, BHT. Partially hydrogenated soybean oil has appeared in some formulations. The cheese is a processed blend. The pepperoni contains sodium nitrite. Celeste is not expensive. It is not pretending to be artisan. But its sodium density, meaning the amount of sodium packed into a small product, is among the highest in the frozen pizza category. And because it is marketed as a single serving, people eat the whole thing without doing the math. Number 7. Screamin' Sicilian. Now we move into a different kind of problem. Screamin' Sicilian is not a budget brand. It is not trying to be cheap. It positions itself as a bold, flavorful, almost craft-style frozen pizza. The boxes are loud. The branding is aggressive. The price point is higher, often $7 to $9. And to be fair, the taste is generally well reviewed. But the ingredient list is long, and the sodium and saturated fat levels are significant. A serving of Screamin' Sicilian Bessie's Revenge, their cheese pizza, can contain over 800 milligrams of sodium and around 10 grams of saturated fat. And the servings are listed as 1/4 of the pizza, which is, again, smaller than what most adults actually eat. The bigger concern with Screamin' Sicilian is the premium pricing. You are paying craft pizza money for a product that still relies on many of the same processed ingredients, including modified starches, dough conditioners, and processed oils that cheaper brands use. The flavor profile may be bolder, but the formulation is not as far from mainstream frozen pizza as the branding suggests. When a brand charges more, the standard should be higher, and Screamin' Sicilian's ingredient list does not always clear that bar. Number 8. Lean Cuisine Frozen Pizza. Lean Cuisine is not typically thought of as a pizza brand, but their frozen pizza products are in millions of freezers because they carry the promise of portion control and calorie management. The shopper buying Lean Cuisine pizza is often making what they believe is a healthier choice. But calorie reduction does not automatically mean ingredient quality. Lean Cuisine French bread, pepperoni pizza contains modified food starch, soy protein isolate, sodium phosphates, caramel color, and a long list of stabilizers and emulsifiers. The cheese is a processed blend. The meat toppings contain fillers and preservatives. The sodium is also notable. A single Lean Cuisine French bread pizza can contain over 700 milligrams of sodium. For a product marketed to health-conscious consumers, that is a significant amount in a small portion. The trap here is the health halo. The Lean Cuisine name implies that the product is a smart dietary choice. But reducing calories by shrinking the portion while filling it with processed ingredients is not the same as making a cleaner product. It is the same industrial frozen pizza, just smaller and more expensive per ounce. Number 9. Tony's Frozen Pizza. Tony's is another Nestlé-owned brand, and it sits at the very bottom of the price ladder. You can often find Tony's pizzas for $2 to $3. At some stores, they are the cheapest frozen pizza available, and the formulation reflects that. Tony's original crust pepperoni pizza uses imitation mozzarella cheese, which is listed as pizza topping rather than cheese. The primary ingredients in that topping include water, palm oil, modified food starch, and casein, which is a milk protein. There is real cheese further down the ingredient list, but the bulk of what melts on top of your Tony's pizza is an engineered cheese substitute. This is legal. The label does not call it mozzarella. It calls it pizza topping. But the average shopper looking at a pizza with melted white stuff on top is not stopping to consider that what they are eating is mostly palm oil and starch held together with milk protein. Tony's is honest in the sense that it never claims to be premium, but it is a clear example of how far the frozen pizza category can stretch the definition of pizza before it stops being pizza and starts being a cheese-flavored bread product. Number 10. Private Selection, Kroger. Private Selection is Kroger's upscale store brand. It is positioned above their standard Kroger brand and is meant to compete with premium national brands. The packaging is sleek. The names sound artisan: roasted garlic chicken, margarita, mushroom and truffle. But when you look at the ingredient lists on some Private Selection frozen pizzas, you find the same modified starches, the same processed cheese blends, the same dough conditioners, and the same sodium levels as mid-tier national brands. The difference is often in the toppings, which may include a slightly more interesting flavor combination, and in the packaging, which looks significantly more upscale. The concern here is not that private selection is worse than other brands. It is that it charges a premium, sometimes $6 to $8, for a product that is not meaningfully cleaner or simpler than what you would get from a DiGiorno or a Red Baron. The store brand premium tier is one of the fastest growing segments in grocery, and the quality does not always match the positioning. If you are going to pay more, you should get more. And with some private selection frozen pizzas, what you are getting more of is better graphic design. Number 11. California Pizza. Kitchen Frozen Pizzas. CPK Frozen Pizzas carry the name of a sit-down restaurant chain. That association alone does a tremendous amount of marketing work. When a shopper sees California Pizza Kitchen in the freezer, they think of the restaurant experience. They think of made-from-scratch dough, fresh ingredients, a real kitchen. But CPK frozen pizzas are manufactured by Nestlé. They are produced in the same industrial pipeline as DiGiorno, Tombstone, Jack's, and Tony's. The ingredient lists reflect that. A CPK margarita pizza contains sugar in the crust, modified food starch, sodium phosphates, and soy lecithin. The sodium levels are competitive with mainstream frozen pizza, often exceeding 700 milligrams per serving. The price, however, is not competitive. CPK frozen pizzas often retail for $7 to $9, sometimes more. You are paying restaurant brand money for a Nestlé factory product. The taste may be slightly more refined than a Tombstone, but the ingredient architecture is not dramatically different. This is one of the clearest examples of brand licensing in the frozen food aisle. The restaurant lends its name. The manufacturer lends its process, and the shopper pays for the illusion that those two things are the same. Now, let's talk about the brands that actually deserve a spot in your freezer. Good choice number 1, Newman's Own Thin and Crispy. Newman's Own is not a perfect brand, and not every product in their line is exceptional. But their thin and crispy frozen pizzas have a noticeably shorter ingredient list than most competitors. The cheese is real mozzarella. The crust is made with basic ingredients: flour, water, olive oil, yeast, salt, sugar. You will not find a parade of dough conditioners or modified starches. The sodium is still present because it is frozen pizza, but it tends to be lower per serving than many of the brands we just discussed. And all profits from Newman's Own go to charity, which does not change the nutrition label, but does change where your money goes. The drawback is that thin crust is not for everyone, and the pizza is not large. But for a mainstream brand available at most grocery stores, Newman's Own delivers a cleaner ingredient list at a reasonable price. Good choice number 2, Amy's Frozen Pizza. Amy's is one of the most recognized organic frozen food brands in America. Their frozen pizzas use organic flour, organic tomatoes, and real cheese without the modified food starches and sodium phosphates found in conventional brands. The ingredient lists are short and readable. Amy's does have a sodium issue in some products. Their margarita pizza, for instance, contains around 640 milligrams of sodium per serving. That is lower than many conventional brands, but it is not low. Check the specific variety you are buying because the sodium ranges vary across their line. The price is higher, often $6 to $8, but unlike some of the premium brands we flagged earlier, Amy's ingredient list actually justifies the markup. You are paying more for organic ingredients and simpler formulations, not just for better packaging. Amy's is not flawless, but it is one of the few frozen pizza brands where the premium price reflects a genuinely different product inside the box. Good choice number 3, Trader Joe's Frozen Pizzas. Trader Joe's offers multiple frozen pizza options, and not all of them are equal. But several of their options, particularly the Trader Joe's Pizza Margarita and the Trader Joe's Organic Tomato and Mozzarella Pizza, stand out for short ingredient lists, real cheese, and the absence of many of the additives common in mainstream brands. The prices are also competitive. A Trader Joe's frozen pizza often costs between $4 and $6, which puts it in the same range as DiGiorno, but with a significantly cleaner ingredient panel. The limitation is availability. Not everyone lives near a Trader Joe's. But if you do, Their frozen pizza section is one of the better options in mainstream grocery retail. Just read the labels, because their novelty and seasonal pizzas can vary more in formulation. Good choice number 4, Freschetta Naturally Rising. Freschetta is a brand that often gets overlooked because it sits right next to DiGiorno on the shelf and looks similar. But there are differences worth noting. Freschetta's Naturally Rising crust uses a simpler dough recipe in many of their varieties. The cheese is real mozzarella. And while the ingredient list is not as short as Amy's or Newman's Own, it tends to be cleaner than DiGiorno's for a comparable product at a comparable price. Freschetta is not an organic or health-focused brand. It is a mainstream frozen pizza. But within the mainstream category, it often delivers a better ingredient-to-price ratio than its more famous competitors. The sodium is still significant, so check the label on the specific variety. But if you are choosing between Freschetta and DiGiorno in the same price range, Freschetta's formulation often edges ahead. Good choice number 5, Oggi Frozen Pizza. This is a smaller brand, and it may not be available at every store. But Oggi and brands like it that focus on Italian-style frozen pizza with minimal ingredients represent what the category can look like when the priority is simplicity rather than shelf engineering. Oggi's ingredient lists are remarkably short. Flour, water, tomatoes, mozzarella, olive oil, salt, basil, yeast. That is closer to what you would use if you made pizza at home. No modified food starch, no sodium phosphates, no dough conditioners, no BHA or BHT. The price is higher, the availability is limited, and the texture is different from what most Americans expect from frozen pizza because it is not engineered to mimic delivery pizza. It is engineered to mimic actual pizza. If you can find it, it is worth trying. And if you cannot find Oggi specifically, look for any frozen pizza brand where the ingredient list reads like a recipe rather than a chemistry experiment. Here is your checklist. Use this the next time you are standing in the frozen pizza aisle. 1. Flip the box over. Always. The front is advertising, the back is the product. 2. Look at the cheese. If the label says mozzarella cheese, that is real cheese. If it says pizza topping or pasteurized processed cheese product, or you see modified food starch and sodium phosphate listed under the cheese section, you are getting a processed substitute or a heavily modified blend. 3. Count the ingredients in the crust. A good frozen pizza crust needs flour, water, oil, yeast, salt, and maybe sugar. If you see DATEM, sodium stearoyl lactylate, calcium sulfate, L-cysteine, or a list of dough conditioners, the crust was built for factory speed, not for quality. 4. Check the sodium per serving and then check the serving size. Most frozen pizzas list a serving as 1/4, 1/5, or 1/6 of the pizza. Multiply the sodium by how much you actually eat. If a serving is 800 milligrams and you eat a third of the pizza, you are getting roughly 1,600 milligrams. The American Heart Association recommends no more than 2,300 milligrams per day, with an ideal limit of 1,500. 5. Look for BHA, BHT, and sodium nitrite in the meat toppings. These are preservatives that have drawn scrutiny from consumer health organizations. They are common in pepperoni and sausage toppings. If you want to avoid them, look for brands that use uncured meats or that specifically state no artificial preservatives in the meat. 6. Compare price to ingredient quality, not price to brand name. A $6 pizza with 15 clean ingredients is a better value than a $7 pizza with 45 ingredients and a famous name. Price per ounce matters, but ingredient quality per dollar matters more. 7. Be skeptical of restaurant names on frozen boxes. A restaurant name on a frozen pizza means a licensing deal. It does not mean the restaurant made the pizza. It does not mean the restaurant's recipe is inside. Check who actually manufactures the product and judge the pizza by its ingredient list, not by the dining experience you associate with the name. Here is the bigger picture. Frozen pizza is not going away. It is one of the most convenient, affordable, and universally loved foods in America. The goal is not to make you afraid of it. The goal is to make you aware that this category, more than almost any other in the freezer aisle, rewards companies that invest in marketing over companies that invest in ingredients. The best frozen pizzas are the ones that look the most like actual food when you read the back of the box. Short ingredient lists, real cheese, simple crusts, recognizable components. That is the standard. And it is a standard that most of the biggest names in the category are not meeting. Next time you reach into that freezer, flip the box. Read the cheese line, count the crust ingredients, check the sodium math. It takes 10 seconds. And those 10 seconds will tell you more about what you are feeding your family than anything the front of that box will ever say. If you found this useful, check the product in your freezer right now. Tell me in the comments what you found on the label. Share this with someone who still grabs the same brand every week without looking. And if you want to see what we found when we investigated another everyday product most families trust without question, that video is right here. I will see you in the next one.